The next morning, the office was different. You could feel it in the air, that charged quiet that follows a storm. People avoided eye contact, voices hushed, footsteps lighter. The once invincible Daniel Bennett now walked through hallways like a ghost wearing an expensive suit. Hazel didn't show up. Her desk was cleared out before noon. Just a lipstick-stained mug and a broken perfume bottle left behind. The rumor mill said she'd been temporarily suspended pending investigation. But I knew better. Hazel had been replaced by the one thing she couldn't manipulate: truth. Daniel called me into his office late that afternoon. He looked smaller somehow, slouched behind the same desk where he'd once spoken to me like I was disposable. "I didn't know she was doing that," he said quietly. "You have to believe me." I stared at him for a long moment. "I don't have to do anything, Daniel." He sighed, rubbing his temples. "The board's furious. They're blaming my oversight. I might have to step back for a while." I tilted my head. "Maybe that's for the best. You could use some time off, remember?" The irony didn't miss him. His lips tightened, shame flickering across his face. "You really think I deserve this?" I met his eyes. The same eyes that once dreamed with me, now dulled by pride and consequence. "I think," I said slowly, "we all get what we build. You built this." Silence filled the room, heavy, final. As I stood to leave, he whispered, "You planned this, didn't you?" I paused at the door. "No, you did. I just stopped cleaning up your mess." Walking out of that office, I didn't feel victorious, just free. It wasn't the rush of revenge that filled me, but the calm of release. That night, I sat on the balcony with a cup of tea, watching the city lights flicker below. The same skyline we once dreamed about building together. But now, for the first time in years, it was mine. Not because I took it from him, but because I finally stopped giving it away. They said it was temporary, as a stabilizing move until the company recovered its footing. But the truth was simple. No one knew the company's backbone better than the woman who quietly built it. When I walked into the boardroom that morning, the same room where Daniel once humiliated me, everything looked the same. The polished wood, the sleek screens, the smell of expensive ambition. But the air? The air was different. Because I was sitting at the head of the table now. The luxury seat. The one Hazel once flaunted like a crown. Funny how something as simple as a chair could hold so much history. Power, pride, betrayal, validation. As I adjusted the mic and opened the meeting, I caught my reflection in the glass wall. For a moment, I saw the woman I'd been months ago, hopeful, eager, trying to earn her place beside a man who thought she needed his permission to shine. And then I saw the woman I'd become. Calm, composed, unshakable. I started the meeting the same way Daniel used to, but with one difference. "This company was built on partnership," I said. "And partnership means accountability, not control. Let's start rebuilding with honesty." The room nodded in agreement. There was no applause, no drama, no spotlight moment, just quiet respect. And somehow, that meant more. Later, after the meeting, I lingered alone for a while. My fingers traced the edges of the seat, the symbol of everything I'd lost and everything I'd reclaimed. Daniel had left the company. Hazel had disappeared from the city. And me, I didn't need revenge anymore. I had something far more valuable. Peace. As I stood to leave, I looked back one last time and whispered to the empty room, "You can keep your luxury seats, Daniel. I make my own now." Then I turned off the lights. Heels echoing down the hallway, not as someone's wife or someone's replacement, but as the woman who finally remembered her own worth. It happened 6 months later. A quiet Wednesday afternoon, I was reviewing contracts when my assistant buzzed in. "Mrs. Bennett, there's someone here to see you." I didn't even look up. "Tell them to schedule an appointment." She hesitated. "He says it's Daniel." For a moment, the pen slipped from my fingers. That name, once so familiar, so heavy, now sounded foreign, like a song I'd forgotten the words to. When he walked in, he looked nothing like the man who once ran boardrooms with polished confidence. His tie was loose, his eyes tired, the kind of tired that comes from losing something you can't rebuild. I wasn't sure you'd see me, he said softly. I almost didn't. He glanced around the office, my office, at the awards. The glass windows, the city view. You did it, he murmured. You really did. I just finished what we started, I replied. He nodded, then tried to smile. I wanted to apologize. For Hazel, for the way I treated you. I thought power made me stronger, but without you, it all fell apart. I listened quietly. Once those words would have melted me. Now they just sounded like echoes arriving too late. I'm happy you're realizing that, I said, but you don't owe me an apology. You owe yourself one. He looked down, swallowing hard. Do you ever miss us? I stood, walking toward the window. The city stretched out beneath us, vast, alive, moving forward. I miss who we were, I said honestly. Before success turned love into hierarchy. He nodded slowly. I guess I just wanted to see you one last time. I smiled gently. Then I'm glad you did. Goodbye, Daniel. He hesitated at the door, as if wanting to say something more, but didn't. When the door closed, I let out a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. No tears. No regret, just peace. I turned back to my desk, the late sunlight catching the edge of my nameplate. CEO, Emma Bennett. It glowed like quiet justice. Not revenge, not victory, just balance, finally restored. They say revenge is loud, full of fire, rage, and chaos. But I learned that sometimes it's quiet. It doesn't come from screaming back. It comes from walking away, letting the noise collapse on itself, and standing so still that the world has no choice but to notice your peace. For a long time, I thought justice meant watching them fall. Daniel, Hazel, the people who took my voice, my place, my worth. But in the end, I realized justice wasn't about them losing. It was about me remembering who I was before they tried to rewrite my story. People often ask me how I managed to stay calm, how I didn't break when they humiliated me in that boardroom, or when he handed Hazel the seat that should have been mine. The truth is, I did break. But sometimes breaking is just another word for transforming. Silence became my weapon. Dignity became my armor. And patience became my revenge. Because power doesn't always sit at the head of the table. Sometimes it sits quietly in the corner, taking notes, watching patterns, waiting for the right moment to turn truth into consequence. When Daniel handed Hazel that luxury seat, he thought he was showing me my place. What he didn't realize was, he was handing me my reason, and in the end, it wasn't revenge that saved me. It was self-respect. Now, when I walk past that same boardroom, I don't feel anger anymore, just gratitude for the lesson, the strength, and the silence that built me back stronger. Because sometimes, life will strip you of everything just to prove one thing. You were never meant to sit at someone else's table. You were meant to build your own. The mansion smelled of roses and expensive candles. The same air that had held laughter just moments before now felt suffocating. I remember standing near the grand staircase, clutching my champagne, my eyes scanning the crowd of familiar faces. Everything seemed normal, until Evelyn's hand found mine, warm and deliberate, guiding a silver box toward me. Daniel looked away, pretending not to see, as if erasing me could erase what was about to happen. I opened the box slowly, forcing a polite smile, the room's chatter fading into a distant hum. Inside lay neatly stacked papers, official, stamped, signed. My name beside Daniel's in bold letters, petition for divorce. Alongside it, a small note in Evelyn's precise handwriting. You'll thank me one day. My knees buckled, my hands trembling so violently the box almost fell. I could feel the heat rise to my cheeks as whispers circled like vultures. I tried to speak, to ask if this was some cruel mistake, but my throat refused words. The world tilted, and I fainted, collapsing onto the plush carpet of the grand hall. When I woke, someone had called for water. A chair had been pulled out. Cameras flashed, capturing the moment as I stared at the papers, stunned and humiliated. By morning, social media was flooded, every platform alive with images of me holding the divorce papers, captions dripping with scandal. Comments poured in. At his own party? She didn't see that coming. Divorce before the cake? Brutal. I felt stripped bare, exposed to the world's judgment. Every achievement, every effort to belong, every attempt to prove I wasn't a gold digger vanished under the weight of public humiliation. Evelyn's plan had worked perfectly. I had fallen, and everyone had watched. And yet, amidst the shame and disbelief, something inside me shifted. I realized that humiliation could only touch the surface. The real power, the power to rise, to respond, to reclaim, was still mine. They thought they'd destroyed me, but they had only lit the fuse. I left the mansion before sunrise, carrying nothing but a suitcase with the bare essentials. Each step away from that gilded cage felt like shedding layers of a life I had been forced to perform. The city streets were quiet, empty, unlike the constant chatter and judgment I had left behind. I didn't call anyone. My family would have gasped, tried to intervene, maybe even plead, but I needed to vanish on my own terms, even if invisibly, into a world that didn't yet know I existed. The first nights alone were brutal. I sat on my new, modest apartment floor, staring at the blank walls, replaying Evelyn's smirk and Daniel's indifference over and over. The loneliness pressed down on me, and I allowed myself to grieve. Every memory of laughter turned hollow. Every dream of belonging crumbled. The social media posts still haunted me, strangers' opinions gnawing at my sense of worth. For weeks I felt like ashes scattered by the wind, lost, fragile, invisible. Eventually, I forced myself to get out. I needed work, a reason to occupy my mind, a small anchor in this storm of despair. I found a position at a tiny event planning firm, far removed from grand mansions and glittering halls. It wasn't glamorous, it wasn't prestigious, but it was honest and it was mine. I arranged tables, coordinated small gatherings, learned the rhythm of creating joy without expectation or judgment. The work was grounding. Slowly, I rebuilt myself piece by piece, finding pride in competence rather than approval. The freedom was intoxicating, the ability to wake up each day without performing, without enduring whispered critiques or forced smiles. I was starting over, humble but alive, bruised but unbroken. In the quiet moments, I allowed myself a strange satisfaction. Evelyn had tried to destroy me, and yet here I was, breathing, moving forward, unseen, but resolute. The ashes of my old life were cold, but they were mine to rise from, and I could feel the spark of something stronger beginning to burn inside me. Months passed in quiet determination. My days at the event planning firm were filled with small victories, perfectly aligned tables, seamless schedules, happy clients who never knew the chaos behind the scenes. I was rebuilding not just my career, but my sense of self. The humiliation still lingered, but it had transformed from a raw wound into a slow-burning ember, one I hadn't yet allowed to ignite. Then the news came. A mutual friend mentioned, almost casually, that Evelyn was planning her 60th birthday. A gala of opulence, of course, hosted in her estate with a guest list that read like a who's who of the city. "It's going to be huge," the friend said. "The catering and planning are through Langley Events." "They're stretched thin. You know they could use extra hands." My stomach dropped. Langley Events? That was my firm's partner on overflow work. I listened quietly, heart hammering as the gears of fate clicked into place. I offered to take the assignment, careful to use my maiden name, careful not to reveal my identity. My boss agreed, oblivious to the storm he was unleashing. I walked into the planning office, studying floor plans, lighting designs, and seating charts, each page a tool I could shape. The irony wasn't lost on me. The same woman who had stripped me of dignity, the one who thought she could humiliate me before all of her high society friends, had handed me the keys to her kingdom without knowing it. I felt a rush I hadn't experienced since the divorce papers. Exhilaration, empowerment, and the faintest taste of vindication. This was more than work. It was an opportunity. Every decision I made, every table arrangement, every program schedule would be under my control. Every detail could be orchestrated to reveal the truth she had tried to bury. For the first time in months, I smiled without effort. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was positioning myself to return on my own terms, to rewrite the script that Evelyn had drafted for me. And as I studied the guest list, rehearsed the floor plan, and imagined the grand reveal, I realized this was my chance to rise from the ashes and reclaim the power that had been stolen from me. I walked into Evelyn's world under a name she would never recognize. My maiden name, unassuming, invisible. No one suspected I was the same woman she had humiliated so publicly months ago. I moved quietly, organizing menus, coordinating florists, and approving every detail of the lavish decor. Chandeliers, crystal vases, velvet linens, everything screamed opulence, but every element would also serve a purpose I alone understood. I reviewed the guest list with meticulous care, noting who would notice what, who would pay attention to small cues, who would remember subtle humiliations from the past. Evelyn had no idea that the woman orchestrating her perfect night was the very same woman she thought she had broken. She had been boasting to anyone who would listen that Daniel had moved on, engaged to the right woman, someone polished, elegant, untouchable. That false sense of security was my leverage. Every rehearsal, every meeting with caterers and performers, became a chance to shape the night exactly as I envisioned it. I didn't speak of revenge. I didn't flaunt my intentions. I let the staff see me as diligent, competent, professional, nothing more. But behind closed doors, I drafted a finale that would expose every lie Evelyn had carefully crafted over the years. I imagined the moment, a presentation that would highlight her manipulation, her cruelty, and Daniel's blind obedience to her schemes. The music, the visuals, the sequence of events, all choreographed to perfection. This wasn't just a party. It was a stage, and I was the director of a truth she could no longer hide. For the first time, I felt absolute control over my fate. Every detail I approved, every decision I made, was a silent assertion of power she could neither see nor anticipate. The woman she thought weak, the woman she thought defeated, was quietly steering her own destruction. I smiled when I imagined her shock, the gasps of the guests, the way reality would crash through her carefully constructed bubble. And in that calm, measured preparation, I realized something profound. Revenge was not about anger. It was about mastery, patience, and timing. I held all three now. Evelyn had no idea that the night she had planned to celebrate herself would become the night she met the consequences of her own cruelty. The night arrived like a polished dream. Evelyn's mansion gleamed under 100 chandeliers, each crystal prism reflecting her meticulous taste and her inflated ego. A live orchestra played softly in the grand hall, while photographers lined the entrance, snapping images of guests in designer gowns and tuxedos. Every detail screamed wealth, power, and control, the very things she had always equated with success. I stayed behind the scenes, headset on, clipboard in hand, a silent conductor of the chaos everyone else admired. The staff moved at my direction, lights shifting, music cueing, glasses filled and refilled. No one suspected the woman orchestrating the night was the same one Evelyn had humiliated months ago. Calm and composed, I watched her glide through the crowd, laughing, basking in the admiration that had always been so intoxicating to her. Speeches began. Friends, family, and society figures took turns praising her elegance, her generosity, her impeccable taste. Every word was meticulously crafted to inflate her ego, and every word made my pulse beat faster with anticipation. I allowed a small private smile to curl at the edge of my lips, savoring the irony that she was unaware of the role I would soon play in rewriting the narrative of her life. The room shimmered with anticipation, and I felt the tension coil like a spring. Every glance, every compliment, every flash of the camera was part of the stage I had been designing for months. Guests admired the beauty of the event, but they had no idea that the most dramatic moment was yet to come. I checked the final cue one last time. The lights, the music, the video presentation, all aligned perfectly. Evelyn laughed at a joke someone made about her social dominance, oblivious to the fact that her triumph was fleeting. I watched her, still and silent, as the room celebrated her, knowing the weight of what was coming would hit harder than any applause. The beauty, the luxury, the elegance, it all masked the storm I was about to unleash. And in that suspended moment, as she preened under the spotlight, I felt a thrill I hadn't felt in months. Tonight, she would learn that control can be an illusion, and power can be stripped away in silence, orchestrated by the very person she had tried to destroy. The room held its collective breath as Evelyn sat in the center of the grand hall, the queen of her carefully curated kingdom. Guests leaned forward, champagne glasses in hand, murmurs of admiration filling the air. I stayed hidden, headset tight over my ears, heart steady but racing beneath the surface. Every cue I had planned for months was about to unfold, and there was no turning back. The butler stepped forward, silver tray in hand, carrying a small, gleaming box. "A gift, arranged by your family," he announced, voice echoing against the marble walls. Evelyn's eyes sparkled with pride, completely unaware of what lay inside. She took the box delicately, untied the ribbon, lifted the lid, and there it was, a sleek USB drive. Her brow arched as she read the attached card. "Your true gift is truth." Laughter and polite applause filled the room at first, polite confusion lingering in the air. Evelyn tilted the drive as if testing it before inserting it into the awaiting system. Suddenly, the massive projector screen flickered to life, and the lights dimmed, drawing every eye to the wall of light. The video began. First came snippets of whispered conversations, audio recordings of Evelyn instructing Daniel to distance himself, subtle manipulations that painted me as undeserving, greedy, and replaceable. Then came screenshots of text messages, Daniel's own words showing his discomfort, his blind obedience to her will, the ways she had orchestrated the divorce for her version of social perfection. Each frame cut through the air like a knife. Gasps spread across the room. Conversation ceased mid-sentence. Glasses clinked nervously. Evelyn's perfectly maintained smile faltered, a twitch at the corner of her mouth betraying panic. Daniel's face went pale. His jaw tightened. He opened his mouth, but no words came. The realization hit him like a brick. The man who had abandoned me, who had let her rewrite our lives, now stared at undeniable proof of the truth. "Daniel," I heard her whisper. Trembling. "This isn't—" He didn't wait for her to finish. His chair scraped back, and he stormed out of the room, leaving guests in stunned silence. Evelyn's eyes followed him, frantic, her composure cracking with every heartbeat. The very power she had wielded over me for months crumbled under the weight of her own actions, exposed for all to see. I stayed hidden, headset off, letting the moment wash over me. The room buzzed with shock, confusion, and whispers of scandal. In that instant, I was no longer the humiliated wife. I was the silent orchestrator of truth, the force that turned her world upside down. The applause, when it came, was not for her. It was for justice finally served, and for me, rising from the ashes, stronger than she had ever imagined. The morning after the gala, the world seemed to hum with the aftermath of what had happened. Headlines screamed across social media and society pages. Evelyn Ross meltdown at her own birthday party, gala turns into scandal, humiliation caught on screen. Sponsors who had once clamored for her endorsement quietly withdrew their support, citing scheduling conflicts or brand realignment. Every carefully built image of perfection she had maintained for decades was unraveling before the public eye. I watched it all unfold. From the quiet of my modest apartment, cup of coffee in hand, a strange calm settling over me. I didn't gloat. I didn't need to. The truth had done its work. The woman who had delighted in my humiliation was now facing a world that no longer bent to her will. Every smirk, every whispered insult, every manipulation she had orchestrated now reflected back at her like a mirror shattering into 1,000 pieces. Daniel's engagement crumbled under the weight of exposure. His fiancée's family, horrified by the video evidence, backed out immediately, leaving him to face the reality of how deeply he had been complicit in my suffering. I wasn't present for his regret, and I didn't need to be. The power I had regained required only one thing: silence. Evelyn tried to reach me. Her messages were frantic at first, polite later, veiled threats and desperate pleas for explanation. I read each one once, then deleted them. I didn't respond. There was no need. The chaos she had tried to impose on my life had returned to her, untouchable and unavoidable. For the first time in months, I felt light. No whispers behind my back, No glances of disdain. No careful performance to maintain an illusion of belonging. The world had realigned, not with my hands raised in triumph, but with my restraint, my patience, and the inevitable consequences of truth. Evelyn's fall was complete, and I had nothing left to prove. It was a quiet Thursday afternoon when Daniel showed up at my office, looking like a man who had been dragged through months of his own mistakes. His hair was disheveled, suit rumpled, and eyes shadowed with regret. He didn't knock. He just entered, as if the space belonged to him now, though I knew he had no right. I need to apologize, he stammered, voice thick with emotion. I was blind. I let her manipulate everything and I lost you. His words trailed off, swallowed by the weight of guilt he couldn't escape. I didn't interrupt, didn't soften my expression. I let him stand there, exposed, vulnerable, and unarmed against the truth of his actions. For weeks I had rehearsed what I might say in this moment, and now that it had come, my response was simple, measured, and final. You didn't lose me, I said quietly, letting each word land with the weight it deserved. You threw me away. You gave up on me when I needed you most, and nothing you do now can erase that. His face fell, the color draining as tears pooled in his eyes. For the first time, he understood, not just the humiliation I had endured, but the depth of the betrayal, the consequences of his inaction, the moments of loneliness he had never acknowledged. He tried to speak, but I shook my head gently, refusing to let him justify or explain. And then he left. I watched the door close behind him, a sound that felt like the final chapter snapping shut. Silence settled over the office, but it wasn't empty. It was full of relief, closure, and an unexpected serenity. I realized in that quiet aftermath that revenge no longer mattered. The humiliation, the betrayal, the plotting, the power plays, they had all led me here, to a place where I was free. Truly free. I leaned back in my chair and let the calm wash over me. No bitterness, no lingering anger, only the knowledge that I had reclaimed my life, my dignity, and my peace. Everything else, the apologies, the tears, the attempts at reconciliation, was secondary. I had already won, not through cruelty, but through survival, patience, and the clarity of knowing my own worth. Months later, I stood in my new apartment, surrounded by warm light, laughter, and the gentle clinking of glasses. It wasn't a mansion, nor was it dripping with ostentation. It was mine, intimate, elegant, and filled with people who truly cared. My closest friends had gathered, each one holding a glass, each one here because of love, not obligation. Here's to you, one of them said, eyes sparkling with pride, to everything you've accomplished. I smiled, feeling the weight of the past months lift from my shoulders. I had opened my own event planning business, started from scratch, and built something that reflected not wealth or status, but skill, creativity, and integrity. Each success felt earned, each milestone a testament to resilience, rather than the hollow validation I had once sought from Daniel or Evelyn. As the evening progressed, we moved to the balcony, the city lights twinkling below. Fireworks began to bloom in the night sky. Bursts of color mirrored in the wide, honest smiles around me. I raised my glass, feeling the warmth of genuine celebration, and whispered softly, "Best gift ever." Not a gift wrapped in silver or laced with cruelty, but the gift of my own freedom, my own power, and my own life. I caught my reflection in the glass railing, the same image I had once envied in Evelyn's mirrors. Only now it was unburdened, confident, radiant. No one here doubted my place. No one questioned my worth. I was finally seen, truly seen, for who I was, and not for who someone else wanted me to be. The transformation was complete. Where once I had been humiliated, dismissed, and orchestrated against, now I was celebrated, not for status, not for wealth, but for resilience, intelligence, and the courage to reclaim my narrative. The story had come full circle. The echoes of that birthday long ago faded into memory, replaced by the vivid reality of my own triumph. I sipped my wine, watching the last firework bloom, and for the first time in a long time, I allowed myself to feel completely at peace. I had survived, I had risen, and I had become the person I was always meant to be: strong, independent, and unapologetically victorious. No one saw me that night. I stayed in the shadows, letting the world react before I ever appeared. I didn't seek to ruin Evelyn, though she had spent months trying to ruin me. My goal was simpler, quieter, to reveal the truth, to let her carefully constructed image crack under the weight of her own actions. The luxury birthday party had been her stage for decades, a showcase of power, wealth, and perfection. I didn't take that away. I simply rewrote the script. Every detail I orchestrated, every moment I timed, was designed to reveal what had been hidden: her manipulation, her cruelty, the ways she had tried to erase me. I didn't shout. I didn't attack. I let reality speak, and it did, louder than any confrontation could. As I look back now, I understand the strange satisfaction of watching truth unfold. No anger, no malice, only clarity. Justice isn't always loud. Sometimes it's precise, calculated, inevitable. That night, the room held its breath, and in that silence, I found my own peace. They gave me divorce papers. I gave them the truth, wrapped in silver,